So before we start watching, I just kind of wanted to give a little background as to why I even decided to watch this. As some of you might know, people who've been following my progress throughout the game or my Final Fantasy journey or whatever, I am currently on the exhausting road of leveling all my jobs to 90, and I think I have like five left or something like that. And I'm currently leveling my last healer. Funnily enough, my last healer to be leveling is White Mage. And honestly, I'm at the point where I'm starting to make decisions on whether or not I want to be ever healing, because mostly healing has been stressful for me for many reasons. I'm just it's not hard, it is a little boring to me, but like I think mostly it comes down to just the fact that I don't have the personality of a good healer. I'm impatient. I often forget that I actually am supposed to be healing because I mostly focus on the boss being a tank main. I sometimes, just completely forget to focus on the tank and I just do my own thing. So I think the time has come for me to, I don't know, to make some decisions. Not that they can't be changed later on, but this is something that influences also my inventory management, which gears I want to keep, which ones I don't want to keep. And it's not a big deal really, but at the same time, I think I'm just kind of going through saying goodbye to healing for a little bit. But before I do, I just kind of wanted to check out a video like this to see if I've been missing something.
Welcome to another video in which I want to talk about some common healer misconceptions. I guess for the third time again, but listen. These are still so relevant that I want to spend some minutes on that topic again for all those that still want to neglect their own healing potential, or for those that just never heard about it, as healing is designed differently in other.
Well, I wonder if it actually talks me into giving it a decent shot later on in the end game, because I never even I never even QX for dungeons with healers or anything. They just sit there.
games. First of all, healing is not any more difficult than tanking or being a DPS job. Yes, some will instantly disagree, but give me a moment to explain.
I don't think healing is more difficult. I just think that healing requires more of an adapted personality to your task than the maybe the rest of the rest of the roles. Tanks are just like, I don't know, DPS that have to make themselves a priority to the boss. And yes, you have to protect the group as well and whatnot, but like with healers, it's just a little bit different. Like you feel like you're the same as everyone else, but then you go into a dungeon as a healer, and if you're the one wiping and you don't have, like, I don't know, a red mage or whatever in your party, and no one reses you, like everyone dies just because you died. And that kind of focus, even in the dungeons, like even in the leveling dungeons and whatnot, is something that not everyone can do or wants to do. I'm not saying that most people just want to be, I don't want to say useless, but just run through the dungeon and just DPS the boss and get it over and done with. But I'm saying that I think healing requires a lot more focus and determination than other roles.
Healing is not more difficult because you basically have the same amount of buttons to press like any other job out there, which is even further amplified by the fact that you don't have to stick to a strict rotation or pattern, or at least ignoring these rotations and patterns and doing them in your own way is not anywhere as punishing as this is on a DPS job or even a tank. I mean, it is as simple as there's incoming damage, you heal. And on that regard, you don't even need to max out people to their full HP capacity, as you got a co-healer that might be able to use one of their efficient heals as well, to fulfill your healing duty together. The only section of this game where
Healing with someone, especially with someone I don't know, for me is such a strange thing. It's like, I don't know. It's like having to cooperate with someone who can't hear you, who can't see you. It's like to me, those parties with like two or more healers, they're just so weird and clunky when no one knows what their exact responsibilities are. And I'm talking about higher end content, like let's say extreme trials or even savage or whatever. It's like if you're queuing into a party finder and you don't know the person, you don't know when they use their cooldowns, you don't know what they prioritize. It's like even clearing that kind of content, sometimes it feels like such a gamble to me, because like I don't know, just tuning in with someone like that is so weird. I feel the same way as a tank main as well. And sometimes like when I stream and I queue into a party finder with a tank I don't know, it's just I like to compare it to like one night stands because like when you meet someone in a party finder, it's like you don't know this person, you're supposed to cooperate with them to achieve a common goal. It needs to be fun for both of you. You don't know each other, but you're trying to do your task to the best of your abilities so that I don't know, so that you're having a good time and doing what you do without feeling like the other person is interrupting your normal behavior routine or whatever, and without you feeling like you are interrupting theirs, or let's say I don't know, when it comes to tanking, like wasting um your cooldowns when you see that another person is using the same cooldowns or covers or whatever. It's such a weird clunky thing to get used to, and every time you queue into a new group as a tank or as a healer, you just kind of have to get yourself used to that again, and have to get to know that other, you know, tank or healer or whatever. That's why I always prefer knowing my tanks and healers. For DPS, not that I don't care, but like I could have anyone in my group as a DPS. But if I'm tanking, I like to know my co-tank. And if I'm also tanking, I like to know the healer who is assigned to me. And if I was to be healing, and I personally don't, I would like to know my co-healer. Is that weird?
Healing could be more difficult than the job of the other roles are dungeons, because in this form of content all your healing optimizations can be demanded quickly, and tank damage can get troublesome in some situations. But in all honesty, that is just a matter of getting used to, and once you know how to heal in dungeons, it is not more difficult than with any other role. And last but not least, healer damage is a joke. You have one dot that needs to be kept active on the target, and one single target spell, as well as one AoE spell, whose management is child's play indeed. Just the mix of efficiency and sufficiency is what divides the good and the bad healer, where on DPS or tank jobs it's all about keeping your uptime constantly while performing the correct order of skills over the whole duration of the fight, which in my opinion is actually more difficult to handle. But it's really too close to talk about an actual difficulty difference here. Another wrong idea that is stuck in the heads of some people is that if somebody dies in your party, healers are the first people start at with their blaming efforts, at least in most games. But the big difference in Final Fantasy XIV is that nearly all damage that a single person receives, which is not the tank, is also dealt to other players in your group, and on top of that, damage is heavily scripted. Although there are many exceptions with
Honestly, I'm not very experienced as a healer, but when people say dying people are healers' fault, um, no, I don't think so. I yes, sometimes as a healer you can neglect someone who takes inevitable damage because you're not paying attention, because they should have been topped up, and the next wave or AoE or whatever is coming and you haven't done your job. But most healers, actually experienced healers who I've talked to, they say that healing is boring, especially with their static members, when they like clear like regular content, because most of their static members know what they're doing and they don't have to heal almost at all. So the better group you have, the less work you have to do, and the more time you have for these little like pockets of unfortunate things that can happen in a raid or in a trial or whatever, where you need to res someone with or without swift cast. It's just, it allows you to have that luxury to manage your spells the way you want to when you have a good group.
encounter mechanics that only affect one player, most of the times it's a raid-wide AoE, and if one person dies in particular, while others are easily surviving, chances are high that one person did a mistake earlier and received a vulnerability stack or damage that was not part of the usual damage schedule. And now we got a problem of who
I love how he says damage schedule though.
is to blame. Yes, the healer could have healed up that person to help them in surviving this attack, but it can also be the DPS who could have just avoided death by sticking to mechanics. It could actually be a 50-50 responsibility here, and maybe both players should treat the encounter with more care. But to easily avoid this issue as a healer, I like to heal in a way that takes into account failures of others and myself, and therefore I go a bit more overboard with healing instead of pushing this responsibility to a pixel-perfect handling of mechanics. Because no matter how much glares you can squeeze in between necessary healing efforts, a dead party member is always the much bigger DPS loss than not using glare for 1 or 2 healing spells. I actually believe healing is like car driving. Yes, you can take your given driver's rights for granted, but when this leads to a car crash, sticking to some additional care will definitely lead to a better day for both participants, when the crash could be avoided by doing so. So heal and drive with extra care, especially if you wasted 16 years of your life with World of Warcraft.
Yikes.
Ouch.
Okay, while I don't want to repeat my last video entirely, there's one thing I need to talk about again, as this still seems to be a common misconception people have about healing in Final Fantasy. And this definitely has to leave the hive mind of our player base once and for all. Healers don't need to DPS, or even their main job is healing after all. That is just not.
No, I honestly think that even the people who have migrated from World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy, I think everyone has this down. I think for the first month or so of the big Sprout wave, everyone was just like, oh, healers now need to do damage and whatnot. It was just a weird mindset to get used to. I don't think anyone cares anymore. Honestly, I think everyone knows that healers are supposed to be doing some amount of damage because that's the way encounters are designed. And even the enraged counters where people meet where people kill the boss before the boss enrages, it is done with healers also actively DPSing. And if they didn't DPS, the enraged counter would have expired and the boss would have enraged. So
right. Yes, for the case we explained earlier, taking this extra care to avoid player death. But at the same time, not hitting one single damaging spell in a whole encounter is at least as wrong as letting people die. While all this can be taken with ease in duty finder content, everything above normal difficulty is designed with enraged timers. That means when your group doesn't deal a sufficient amount of damage in a certain period of time, the boss will end your existence. And no, these encounters don't count in just all the damage of your DPS jobs, but also include damage of tanks and healers. The biggest catch here, the more damage is missing due to a tank or healer ignoring their duty to help with that effort, the more pixel perfect gameplay is required from the entirety of other players in that party. Don't get me wrong, we're not talking about missing 1, 2 or even 20 glares or broils in a fight for focusing on healing, but when a healer totally rejects this obligation. I mean, just compare how much damage comes from the healers on this Savage boss here, which is quite healing intense as well. That is more than 15% of the total raid DPS on this fight.
that's insane.
That would not be a high parsed fight without any struggle to meet the requirements of the enrage timer. DPS and tank players would have to compensate for that amount of damage entirely, which is not easy to achieve. But to make it short, and even if it were, they killed the boss without anyone dying, while still pushing out this insane amount of damage. And from the possibility alone, you can see that not trying to deal at least some
Like if you are 10% off from killing or 15% off from killing the boss, and you meet an enrage timer, you are absolutely not killing that boss anytime soon. And even if your group is parsing perfectly, there is no way that that group is ever going to kill the boss just because of the way they designed the fights. I think everyone pretty much understands that.
damage as healer simply means you're leaving potential on the table, worth of up to 8 or 9% of the whole raid damage. So keep in mind that nobody tells you as a healer to not treat your group and endured party members with extra care. But whenever you have literally nothing else to do, because the next raid mechanic will happen not before 15 seconds, get your ass up and throw in some damage spells. They are part of your spell kit for a reason. So, don't let yourself be taken by the thought that healing is any more difficult than the task of any other role in this game. And if anybody dies in your party, it is not your fault automatically. Especially not if you used your spells with extra care for potential failures of others. And remember, dealing damage is helpful to all party members to make their job much
I love how he actually goes over all of his points at the end.
easier. So keep them alive as best as possible, but whenever you got time to deal some damage,
Just do it!
but more importantly, let me know what healer misconceptions you experienced during your time in Final Fantasy XIV, and I will try to sum this up in a follow-up video. For now, and for all those that want to start as a healer, check out the many videos about healing in the description, as well as some guides for some healers in particular. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, or help others to do so as a true healer would.
That's cute. That was a good video. I just kind of want to take a look at the comments to see what people in general say. Let's see. I think the biggest misconception I had is that all healing is active. In at least the two classes I've dabbled in, Scholar and Sage, they have a passive healing mechanic so that I don't have to constantly been healing. Let me see if there's more. As a white mage, I don't DPS in between heals. I heal in between my DPS. Yeah, I feel the same way, and I only just started with my white mage. It just feels like there's not a lot of work to do, at least not early on, anyways. My biggest mistake so far, dipping my toe into the healer role, is over healing by a lot. I don't know why I had to have everyone 100% all the time, because if you don't know the encounter too well, you end up believing that the next damage that's incoming is going to be catastrophic, and you are trying to have everyone at 100% because you're trying to avoid that catastrophe. And I know this because I'm currently there. Hmm. Let me see. The issue I have with healer is that it's only fun when progging. Once the content is figured out, and or your static uses a guide, healer no longer becomes fun and is instead the most boring role to play. I guess it can get a little less rewarding because you're dealing the shittiest amount of damage, and at the same time you're not feeling like you're doing as much for your group. So yeah, I totally get that. Overall, it was a good video. Definitely didn't get me to feel like I'm gonna be, I don't know, becoming a healer main anytime soon. But I think for everyone who really wants to heal or is wondering if they should, it was a good watch.